It's awesome. Just like our next speaker.
How are y'all doing? Thanks for coming out. I just actually flew in from LA to be here with you all, so it's great to have so many people here. I'm just gonna talk a little bit about my background and how I started, and a couple recent projects that I've done in the last couple years. We grew up in Mankato, Minnesota, which is this very, very flat place. And I guess I should first introduce myself if you don't know. So I'm a photographer for National Geographic, a filmmaker, documentary filmmaker. I do commercial film work, and I also climb and ski professionally for the North Face. I've been on the North Face team for 18 years. So I kind of have this, cross-section of multiple careers, and they all kind of intersect in terms of the storytelling that I do. And it's something that I'm very grateful that I'm able to do, and it's also something that I have been kind of fostering for quite a while. And I truly love what I do, and that makes it special, and I hope that it really shows in the work. So, but that being said, I have specialized in kind of expedition shooting, quite a bit to the Himalayas, but really all over the world. But my start was in Mankato, Minnesota. My parents were both Chinese immigrants. I'm first generation Chinese, and they had a particular idea for me, or maybe only a few ideas. I grew up, and my whole understanding of what I could do for a career was lawyer, doctor, or finance, and I studied hard. I grew up playing the violin and swam competitively and studied martial arts, and I was really trying to make my parents happy. But in college, I discovered climbing, and I started skiing earlier, so I was skiing on the race team, but I found climbing, and climbing became this incredible vehicle for me to see the world, and I just fell in love with it. So at the same time, I picked up a camera. So I was in my early 20s when I first picked up a camera and I started shooting. So I moved into the back of my car, and I told my parents, hey, look, I'm just gonna take a year off, and I'm gonna do this climbing thing and get it out of my system. I'm gonna be a skier and DL ski bum for a year, and then I'll go pursue my career. They were quite skeptical about that, as you can imagine. 1 year turned into 2, and 2 years turned into 3, and I lived out of the back of a little Subaru hatchback for 7 years, just climbing and going on expeditions and pursuing this dream of exploring the world. Obviously, my parents were totally mortified, and I would call my sister and say, hey, how are mom and dad doing? And my sister would say, well, mom just keeps saying I've raised a homeless man. And that was kind of their impression of what I was doing, I was a climbing bum and a ski bum. And I was really fortunate to find photography, though. And photography became this other vehicle to see the world. And it was this creative outlet for me where I could photograph the places that I was going, but really the people that I was with. And many of those people turned out to be some of the great climbers and skiers of our generation. And I was able to be there and part of that community. So that was really kind of the start. And I started shooting expeditions, and almost I'd say less than 6 months after picking up a camera, I went and actually, no, I'll go backwards a little bit. The first time I picked up a real SLR, like a real camera, my climbing partner was showing me how to use this camera. And he took told me to figure out how to shoot it, showed me how to, it was a manual camera, and I shot a photo with it. And he went out and tried to sell the photos that he had taken, and he sold one photo, and it was the photo that I had taken. So he was a little bummed, but, I got paid for this photo, and I remember, it was like $500, and I was like, that is so much money, because at the time, I'm like 21 or 22, and I could live in the back of my car for like 3 months on $500. So I was like, I just have to take one photo a month, and I could do this for the rest of my life. That was my 22-year-old mind at work, being very entrepreneurial. And little did I know now that I looked at the licensing deal in retrospect, and I totally got screwed, but that's okay, that's beside the point. But that story is really about pointing out how anybody can be a photographer if they throw themselves at it, and it's about being passionate about it. And it became as much of an obsession for me to photograph as I was obsessed with being a climber and a skier.